I do it every time. What is up, everybody? Welcome to Jeff Needs Sports again, a production on the Off the Ball Network. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for coming back. If you're first time, we appreciate it. If you're a long time, we love you as always. And tonight's a really, really cool show. We got an all-star cast, and we're doing the ACC college football preview for 2021. And then if you feel like if you're listening, it'll be a different show, but just click on down and you can listen to the our top 3 lifetime college football games of all time. And if you're watching, just stick around. We'll take a little break and then we'll blend right into it. So that's what we're going to do tonight. So like I said, I got an all-star cast. We got Justin Payton from the Off the Ball Network, our YouTube sensation on here tonight. What's up, Justin?
What up, everybody, man? What up, everybody? I'm glad to be on the show, man. Thank y'all for having me.
Hey, we appreciate you. We got Jay Stevens from the Jay Stevens podcast and Locked On Buckeyes and recently Big Ten Media Day superstar. So what's up, Jay Stevens? Thanks for being on, man.
What's up, Jeff? Man, I'm happy to be back here with you guys. Mo, Coach, I haven't done anything with couch coach in a long time.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to be here with you. JP, back with you again. Just excited to be back and talk some football.
Hey, we're glad to have you, man. It's definitely football season. And like he just led into it, our man, the Off the Ball Network NFL senior analyst, Couch Coach Live is here with us. And we'll say resident ACC expert and resident Tar Heels fan. What's up, Cal?
What's going on? What's going on, fellas? Great to be on tonight.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And then once again, 101, my fellow VP from the Off the Ball Network, Dash Radio superstar, host of Up in Flames podcast, Mo Murphy, everyone. What's up, Mo?
Hey, I appreciate you trying to be humble, even though I'm VP 1B. I'm behind you, but I appreciate you being humble. I'm just ready to talk football. I mean, I know y'all are just as excited. I can't wait till we end up touching on the Big Ten, but we all in on the ACC. Yeah, that's a great conference. I will say that. All
right, gentlemen. So let's kick it off. No reason to waste time. So the first question was, is Clemson? Oh, no. I'm sorry. First question was, where does the ACC rank as a conference? We basically know we got 5 big conferences, so to speak, and then we got the other 5. So in your mind right now, as we sit here, where does the ACC rank as a conference? Justin, you go ahead and take it, man.
Oh, man, I kept thinking about it all day long. Where does it rank? Is it better than the SEC? Is it better than the Big Ten? I still have it at number 3 because, like I said, the SEC, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Texas A&M, just like the monster teams over there in the SEC and just really talented, football over there. I still don't have them over the Big Ten with Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State too as well. But they're kind of climbing up the charts a little bit, to number 2, but they're still like number 3 because, Clemson is, going to be the dominant team in the ACC along with, North Carolina this year and also the Miami Hurricanes. So I got them around 3-ish.
All right. Jay Stevens, where's ACC rank in your opinion right now?
So currently standing when it comes to the ACC current college football rankings, this is not taking into account what's going to happen down the road 2025 unless Texas and Oklahoma decide to pay out, I believe it's $76 million to lead the Big 12. I have the ACC at 4. I have SEC 1,
wow,
Big 10 2, Big 12 3, and then ACC 4. I think the top heaviness that they've had so far with Clemson at the top and then everybody else, Clemson and North Carolina, they're decent. They're good. One is going to win the division. I just can't put them as far as saying they're close enough, they're good enough to potentially move the ACC above the Big 12. I mean, we look at the schedule. If you take Notre Dame this year, there's not really any competition for Clemson. Yeah, North Carolina and Miami will be good, but I still don't think they're on Clemson's level. Clemson's at the top tier, very still top heavy to me. I got them at 4. Then Pac-12, unfortunately, is number 5.
I see you. Couch Coach Live. Where do you have ACC as we speak?
Actually, I agree with Justin. Essentially 3rd. I think I look at it just from the standpoint of obviously we know the SEC and we also know that the Big Ten they have at least a handful of contenders to make it to the college football playoff. The only really reason why I had them at 3 because I know for certain Clemson's going to get there, so they'll represent a team, the conference in the college football playoff potentially. Then with the Big 12 is they're just so they beat each other up. So it's Oklahoma's really the only one that's kind of in essence kind of the head and shoulders of that conference. So I just look at it from the standpoint. I think ACC will rank 3. But I agree with you, Jay. If Notre Dame was in this, as far as if they were with us together, then they will vault us. I think in that in maybe like a 2B-ish range, but 3. I think 3 at best.
Yeah, we'll touch on that later too. Mo Murphy, this isn't really our wheelhouse. How do you feel about the ACC right now?
So I thought I was going to be the lone wolf when I said what I was going to say, but clearly I wasn't. I have them at number 4, and it's because of everything everybody said of why they're number 3, and then everything Jay said of why they're number 4. When we look at the ACC as a conference, and then if you take away, like Jay said, projections of how good they're supposed to be with Clemson, North Carolina, and Miami, supposed to be powerhouses this year. Talks of people think Miami could upset Bama. We'll have to see if that happens. But with the Big 12, not only do you have Oklahoma, but you have Oklahoma State, who's very competitive. It's not about making the playoffs. See, if we judge it off of those 4 teams, then if we judge off the 4 teams that make the playoffs, and even if we just go off of New Year's Six Bowl, Big 12 is actually, when it comes bowl season, the Big 12 is actually very successful in their bowl matchups, no matter who they play. You have Oklahoma State, who's fairly consistent at being in that 9-3, 8-4 range. Oklahoma's usually a 1 or 2 loss team. But I look at the bottom, and I think that's where you defer who are the better conferences. Top heavy, you could go and say, well, Clemson, Ohio State are just as good as anybody. But when I start looking at that middle and the bottom, I think the Oklahoma State, West Virginia, you've seen Kansas kind of bring their program up a little bit. I still don't think they're at that level, but they've even come up. Kansas State has had a year or 2 where they
I don't know if Kansas is helping your argument. But
no, I'm saying Kansas has had a couple they were decent for a bottom of the barrel team. They just were decent for bottom of the barrel. Okay. They were better than Duke. If I matched them up against a bottom of the barrel ACC team, Kansas had a year or 2 where they were better than Duke. But I think it's a close one between the Big 12 and ACC, and I will understand anybody who gives the ACC the nod simply because of Clemson. But to me, that's the only argument on why ACC is really, I would say, flat out better, is because Clemson is there to represent. But who else is really, if we look at the past 5 years and don't talk about this upcoming season right now, who else has really showed up big time in the ACC outside of Clemson consistently? North Carolina's been really good one year. Had high expectations the next year, fell off. Same with Miami. We thought they were going to be really good. The Big 12 has been very consistent on what teams are going to be what.
But here's what I would add. So I think like most people, I feel the ACC's 3rd. But then once I really think about it, if we took Ohio State out of the Big 10, what conversation will we be having? Do we really think the Big 10's that good, or do we think Ohio State is so good? That would be my question, to that. Because, I think of the second best team in the Big 10, do we really think they could make any noise in the playoffs? I don't necessarily think so. I don't know if I think the Big 10 is competitive, and I don't think anybody wants to schedule them. But as far as if we were talking playoffs, I don't know. After Ohio State, I think there's a bit of a drop off, just in my opinion right now. So I don't know if there's as big a separation as we think. But I think it's closer than ever. So that just leads right into the next one. It's clearly, I gave you guys the stats. So over the last 6 years, Clemson has won 6 conference championships in a row. They by 25 points a game over 6 games. Their conference record in the last 6 years is 46-3. And one of those losses is Notre Dame last year, who's not even a conference team this year. So is this still Clemson and everyone else, or do we think that, we got Sam Howell down there in North Carolina, they're making some noise? Do we think that the gap is closing, or is this still clearly Clemson's conference and everyone else? We'll start with Mo Murphy on this one. We'll go a different direction here.
It's still Clemson and everybody else until proven otherwise. I mean, I know Sam Howell is supposed to be great. And I think he'll have, I think I have him in my Heisman watch. We've talked about him here on your show before, but I still think it's Clemson and everybody else. I mean, I was watching a interview of Dabo Swinney, and we talk about Oklahoma being quarterback U and the great quarterbacks they've had. Clemson does the same thing. They revamp and have a top tier quarterback. They go from Trevor Lawrence to DJ Ugalele. That's not bad. I think
done,
him.
man. Well done.
Yeah. I mastered his name, but they go from Trevor Lawrence to him, and then you look at the plethora of weapons they have. They got Justin Ross coming back. So if I look at their roster right now, I think they have the best roster in the ACC, and I don't even think it's close. I think for this coming season, we're thinking the gap closes because we're projecting how great Sam Howell was supposed to be, and we're also buying stock into De'Aaron King. But outside of that, I think part of the reason teams are so much better is like that quarterback gap. You even look at Ohio State. Their quarterback has been light years ahead of the next best team in the Big Ten. So I think it's the same way with Clemson, and that's why I think it's them and everybody else. But we are projecting that Sam Howell's supposed to have a Heisman candidate season, also with De'Aaron King. So now it gives that hope that North Carolina going to be really good. And I think they will be really good against everybody not named Clemson. And I think the same for Miami. I think they will be a really good team against everybody not named Clemson. So I think it is still a big gap until proven otherwise. And don't let this 1 year fool you for North Carolina, who's not traditionally a football team. Don't let they got a diamond in the rough quarterback think that this is going to bring success for the next 10 years where they're like up there on Clemson's trails. It's still such a big gap in even recruiting over the past few years. North Carolina is doing a better job, but the gap in recruiting is so big. I don't see how you catch up in off season.
Yeah, I agree. The recruiting gap's a big deal. So Jay Stevens, how do you feel about the gap between Clemson and everyone else right now?
It is Clemson and everybody else. I'm going to piggyback off of something that Mo said. He was talking about the quarterbacks from Trevor Lawrence to DJ Uiagalelei. I actually interviewed a Clemson writer who taught me how to say the name.
Of course he did.
It was actually a she. It was a young lady that does a phenomenal job for The Athletic. So
yeah, she's great. I do remember the interview. It's great.
So go back to Taj Boyd. It went back to Taj Boyd to Deshaun Watson, and Trevor Lawrence took over the starting quarterback job. I think it was Kelly Bryant he took over for.
Yeah.
Kelly Bryant ended up transferring, and now you get DJU. I was shorting the name. Then they have a guy coming in, supposed to be, I think, a 2022 recruit who will be there in a couple of, next year, and then he'll probably be the starter 2 years from now. Dabo Swinney has upped the level of recruiting at the quarterback position, and that's really what's helped this team. But you can't forget this defense. I think we overlook the defense. We look at James Skalski, Nolan Turner, who's back there on the the safety, supposed to be one of the better safeties in the country. Brian Brzee, who's a defensive tackle who I have no idea how this guy got him. He is a monster. Yeah. As much as we talk about the offense and the quarterbacks, this defense is loaded year after year after year, returning 10 starters from last year. That's a big part of Clemson. I look at their schedule right now next to me. Outside of Georgia week 1, they don't play anybody. Yeah. They don't play anybody at all. Like, they don't play. I know Couch Coach mentioned Notre Dame's little schedule. Like, they play 5 ACC games. Yeah. They're not playing Clemson this year. I think it was on purpose because ACC wants Clemson to get back to the college football playoff, and they know that if they play Notre Dame, there's a good chance that 1L could derail them from getting there because North Carolina's coming, Miami is coming. Anything could happen in the ACC championship game. I think it's Clemson and everybody else, but I also think, Jeff, that gap is getting a whole lot smarter because I'm not sure that Dabo Swinney can keep this up in this way that you see Nick Saban do it, or Urban Meyer did it for a little bit. Hopefully Ryan Day, all of us, Jeff and Mo, we hope that Ryan Day can keep it up in Columbus. I'm not sure. We're going to see if Dabo can keep this level of recruiting up because so many people are coming right for him. And I think that gap is getting shorter, but it still is Clemson and everybody else.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, Justin, you got some things to say, man. I believe you're a Clemson supporter. Tell us why Clemson is head and shoulders above the conference.
Well, I mean, quarterback DJ, I think he's going to be a breakout star, for Clemson. And, Justin Ross is returning back. He wasn't healthy last year and was out all season. So him returning back really definitely helps the, offense. I'm still kind of concerned on the offensive line. They lost somebody to an Achilles in the springtime, but, that's going to be a concern. I'm not worried much about the defense because, James, that linebacker, he's coming back. Brian Brees, that defensive line is going to be good. I'm worried about the secondary because, we gave up 37 points to Ohio State in the Sugar Bowl and everything. But I'm kind of worried of the.
I remember that.
Yeah, I was worried about the secondary, though. But I think, North Carolina, they're a great team. But the thing with North Carolina is, Sam Howell is a possible Heisman candidate and everything. But there's a lot of new faces at running back and receiver at North Carolina. And the defense is good. They're 6th in pass efficiency. But at the same time, the problem last year was cutting down big plays too as well. So, I'm not worried about North Carolina, but they are a threat to us. Also, Miami coming back. The only thing with Miami is they just have to stay fully healthy. They will go as far as King goes if he stays healthy. And also, with the defense for Miami, they're not that great like they used to be. So, but they still pose as a threat to Clemson. So I think,
and that's you're right. I just want to say, we all agree here that this is all hinged on 2 players, Derek King and Sam Howell, how good they are. Miami's defense is way over exaggerated how good they were last year. They're back, and then when none of their numbers support that. Clemson's got the best defensive line possibly in the country.
The turnover chain is cool.
Yeah.
When they do get one, it's cool. That's
Yeah.
So, Coach, you tell me, you're an ACC country, you're an ACC fan. That's why we had you on the show. You're our expert. You tell me what your perception of Clemson versus everybody else, or if you just want to take it Clemson versus North Carolina this year. I mean, that's obviously the dream matchup. Then we'll get into the Notre Dame situation here in a minute. So I'll let you lead us right into that.
Yeah, so I think necessarily just far as there's still a gap, but the gap is closing. Like you said, Clemson, to Jay's point, I remember Taj Boyd, shout out to Taj Boyd out of my home state. And I thought that was the best that Clemson can ever get. And you look at the evolution, Deshaun Watson, Kelly Bryant, Trevor Lawrence, and now DJ comes into the field. Like you said, there's always as far as recruiting wise, can they keep it up? Because, you can have a run and then it goes. You look at what Carolina's doing now, and we're almost just as good as y'all Buckeyes as far as recruiting, which is, a great thing going forward. And like you said, now in this new day and age of college football, where it's a little bit different now, we got a transfer portal. So I think that could potentially help in the NIL situation. So I think the parity of each conference, even besides the ACC, is going to be a little bit. It's going to be a little bit. A little bit closer than we're gonna have so far as all the top heaviness in certain conferences, because I think that's what's going to end up, I think, ultimately happening. Guys knowing if you go to those Clemsons, Ohio States, and you're buried in the depth chart, but you're like a fast-all athlete, you're gonna head in a conference and another team. But for this year, it's Clemson. I think just like you said, what they do, like we talked about it on the previous show. Clemson doesn't rebuild; they reload. So,
they're on a roll right now. It's incredible what they've done over the last 6, 7, 8, 9 years. I mean, once you really start looking at it, it's an all-time run. If it wasn't for Alabama, we wouldn't be able to wrap our head around what Clemson. I mean, they've been in 6 playoffs in a row. Yeah, that doesn't even make sense. Yeah, at this point.
Amazing.
So, hold on here, little technical stuff. All right. Oh, nope. I don't want that in there.
Whoa.
No. Little tease.
Little tease.
A little preview.
So we kind of all. I think we kind of all agree where Clemson's at as a team, where the conference is at, or whatever. So I want to talk about the Notre Dame situation, and I really started looking at it today, and we've touched on it. So Notre Dame, for anybody listening or watching that doesn't know, plays this kind of awkward partial ACC schedule. I believe they play 5 games this year. None of them are Clemson. Last year they played an ACC schedule and actually went to the ACC championship game. It was a completely different year. I don't know if y'all remember 2020, It was a little different.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Notre Dame agrees to play this. But what I want to ask, especially like this affects, Justin and Coach more than anybody. I kind of want to talk about how we feel about Notre Dame being dropped into this. I mean, that's a national team, an independent team. They're really good. Like no matter what anybody thinks of them, they're a really good team, and they're dropped into your conference. And you got to play them, but it doesn't count as conference wins. But they can mess up your playoff things, and it's not even. So, North Carolina, for instance, has to play them, and Clemson doesn't. And I just want to kind of get everybody's feelings on, how we feel about Notre Dame messing around in the ACC. So, Justin, I'm going to let you take it first. Like, what are your thoughts on Notre Dame just coming into your conference and just kind of messing around?
Yeah, I just don't really understand, how it doesn't really count as a conference win and everything. So that's the part I still don't understand. It still kind of boggles my mind, though. And then they can come in and mess up, with that one loss to them last year. I don't think Trevor Lawrence played that game. I don't think so.
Nope.
I don't think he played that game. So we probably could have. Clemson probably could have beaten Notre Dame if he.
They would have beaten Notre Dame.
Yeah. So, but it still messed up the conference, but we still kind of won we still won the ACC. But with Notre Dame this year, I don't think they're gonna be like that good team because there's a lot of changes. They only got a few starters returning too as well, both offense and defense. So, it's just like a lot of changes. You still have Kyle Hamilton, one of the best free safeties, in the nation and everything. So, I'm not really worried about Notre Dame this year. I think it's going to be kind of like they're still going to be good and still could compete, but it's more like they're kind of just reloading but not competing like up to Clemson's level. So
I got you. Okay, Jay Stevens, you live in Notre Dame country. What's your perspective on Notre Dame dropping into the ACC, messing around and getting out in all this?
Honestly, Jeff, with the playoff era, and let's just say for the next 5 to 10 years, there's not going to be an expansion to 12. We're going to keep this 4-team playoff format. I think it hurts Notre Dame to play this kind of schedule.
Yeah.
Because I think their schedule was a lot harder when they played their rivals every year. Now, they played Michigan, Michigan State, and Purdue every single year. And I know they played more of the military academies every year as well.
Yep.
They kind of pushed those away. I know Michigan – I forget if Michigan or Michigan State was first. I think Michigan kind of wanted to get away from that because Michigan was on the downslide. They're like, wait, we don't have to play Notre Dame. They're recruiting better than us.
Yep.
We don't have to play them every year. That's better for us. But I think it hurts them. I think it hurts them in the long run. Here's an interesting little nerd note that I just found out today. So my whole life, I've gone that I believe that Notre Dame could never join the Big Ten because things had happened previously. Well, Notre Dame is in the Big Ten for hockey, just not football.
Yep.
For football and the fake schedule they have for football and every other sport, they're in the ACC. Every single sport, hockey's in the Big Ten. Football, they don't want to join the conference. I think they're better off independent. I think they're better off going to their old schedule. I've never been a fan of them doing this whole little 5-game ACC thing. Could it be for money? Possibly. But you have your own network. You're on NBC. You're not hurting for money at all. I don't get it. I don't understand you kind of giving into the ACC. Go back to your old ways. Tradition is good. Tradition is one thing I think we're going to lose more of in college football very soon with conference realignment. Go back to the old ways. Make your schedule harder. And then you have an easier chance, even with one loss, to get into the playoff if they stay at a 14 format. Even not. I mean, you're still going to have a better shot to get a higher seed if you are playing a harder schedule.
I agree.
Yeah, totally. Mo Murphy, what do you think about when, as an outsider, we're outsiders. We watch Notre Dame go in and play this partial conference schedule, but it doesn't count as conference wins and all this. Like, do you have any thoughts on it?
Well, part of it is what I don't like is when don't go dibble dabble in a conference and not go for the head of the, don't go for the monster of the team. If you're going to go in there, put Clemson on your schedule. Like, I don't like how you're dibbling dabbling. We're going to pick on these other teams that, North Carolina has some projections to be good. We'll match up with them. We'll match up with Virginia. Maybe Virginia Tech's a little bit better than they have been in the past 5 years. So that'll be a quality win because they're in the Power 5 conference of the ACC. If you're gonna go in there and you're gonna dibble and dabble, you're gonna mess things up. They mess things up for the entire conference. And go to play Clemson. I know, like last year because of COVID, would they play a whole ACC schedule? They had to basically. Right, they had to, they had to get with it, just because the travel was kind of limited, so they weren't going to be able to go to USC and maybe not miss. We just didn't know what it was going to look like. But I don't like if you're going to dibble and dab. Like if you're going to come and play a 5-team Big Ten schedule, put Ohio State on there, or get out, or join the conference permanently. That's just how I feel. Don't come in here and try and beat up on these middle of the pack teams in our conference, and then think like you have a stake at being a playoff team because you beat Michigan State on a down year. You scheduled Minnesota, but you ain't come up here and play Wisconsin or Ohio State. Like, so I just don't like how they dibble and dabble. And then Notre Dame seems so much like an ACC team to me. I know they're not officially a part of the ACC,
I agree,
but I think it should count as a conference win. I'm sorry. Like I know they're not. So you're like, no, it can't. But they just have that ACC feel. They've been kind of connected here and there with a little bit of their rivalries. And I know they also have USC and then Michigan. So you could say like, oh, they're kind of connected to the Big Ten also, but they just seem and feel like such an ACC team to me that I think it should matter if they win or if they lose. It should count as conference losses. If they win, it should be like, if you beat Notre Dame, it should be on your conference record. Because they feel so much like an ACC team. And I think I agree with Jay of sticking with the independents. That's going to benefit Notre Dame, and then go back to your old ways and go through your season playing Michigan, USC, like you said, Purdue, like go through playing your rivalries and you'll get a little more credit, especially looking forward. Those programs are up and coming in a sense, but if you're going to dibble and dabble, either join the conference or get out. Maybe schedule one from each Power 5, but don't just go and pick on the mid-major ACC schools and then beg why we don't want you in the playoffs.
Yeah. So before I let Coach go here, I will say that this year, if Notre Dame runs this schedule, they have a really good year because they got Wisconsin on it. They got USC on it. They got the 5 ACC games on it. They got a pretty good schedule this year. That's irrelevant to what we're talking about here. I just want to say that Notre Dame this year, like when I'm starting to like look forward to my playoff rankings. And if they run the table, they're in pretty good shape. But I don't necessarily agree with them dropping in and playing the 5 games. They kind of only did it because they're running out of teams to schedule because of independence. All these other teams have got conferences, so they had to find a way to fill their schedule, and they kind of made this agreement with the ACC. Then you got all the money and everything. I didn't mind. I thought it felt good them being in the ACC last year, and I think that's their natural place to be. But I don't know. So I want to ask Coach, because this is the perfect person to ask.
Yep.
I believe, if I'm correct, you guys play them and Clemson doesn't, right?
Yep.
And I mean, we're talking about a playoff team. I don't care what you think of Notre Dame. We're talking about a playoff team, a 2-time playoff team, and it's not an even scheduling now. So just how do you feel as a fan?
Yeah, as a fan of the Tar Heels, I'm ready. I'm telling you, my account is already circled for October 30th. It's going to be great for the conference. I think, in my personal opinion, it's going to be a primetime game, NBC under the lights. I mean, it's just one of those things where I'm looking forward to that game, because if Carolina if they have aspirations, well, they do have aspirations, but if they want to go to the college football playoff, they got to win that game, like hands down. Because I think in essence, Notre Dame's probably coming to that game possibly 6-1, 7-0. I think the only hiccups may be Wisconsin at that point, and then Cincinnati at that point in the schedule. So they're gonna probably be a top 10, top 5 team potentially. We all know how Notre Dame is so overvalued. We're always overranked. I put it that way, especially if they're undefeated or they got like 1 or 2 blemishes on their season at that point. But yeah, I definitely think as a Tar Heel fan, this is what you want. And like you said, bright lights on the NBC. I'm ready for it.
Yeah. I don't want to talk too much because Ohio State has them game 1 next year, so that's going to be a bit of a talking point going into next year. But
that's what you want.
So here we go. We'll just kind of go around. It feels like we're on the same page. I think let's talk about. Well, you know what? We'll go around who we think's going to win each of it. Basically, who's going to play in championship game and who's going to win it. And then I'll ask some follow-up questions based on that. So Justin, who's playing the conference championship game and who's winning it? Feels like
Clemson versus North Carolina. Clemson's going to take the victory.
I got you. Jay Stevens.
I got Clemson versus Miami. I think this is the year. I'm just going to go out on a whim and say Miami gets there, but Clemson is going to destroy them. I don't think it's going to be a contest at all.
Okay. Mo.
It's so tough to put a stamp on it because, like, I could see North Carolina or Miami, but I'm going to go Clemson and I'm going to go North Carolina. I'm buying stock in Sam Howell. Miami and North Carolina, I think that game basically comes down to ultimately who plays Clemson. So I'm going to go North Carolina versus Clemson. Clemson murders North Carolina. Sorry, Couch. I'm sorry.
All right. Our resident ACC expert, Couch Coach Live. Give me the conference championship game and the winner, bro.
Clemson versus North Carolina. Yeah, this could be the matchup. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be a very close game. But I think Clemson's going to take it.
Okay, you still have Clemson.
Yeah.
I think that it's Clemson, North Carolina. You know, everybody's healthy. I think Clemson ekes out one more, and I don't know why. But then just a quick question I have for everybody. Like, the forgotten team here is the Miami Hurricanes and Derek King. You know, we didn't talk much about them. I already said that I think they're a little overhyped. You know, they talk about the defense coming back, but Mo Murphy said this on the last show that we all did together. Well, if the defense coming back is one of the worst in the country, I don't know how that's a positive. So you brought back a bad defense. So just real quick, we'll just go around. Coach, we'll start with you.
Yeah.
Why aren't we buying into Miami and Derek King?
I think a lot of it is just the question marks. Well, inconsistent play from time to time during the season. It's almost the same case with Carolina as well, where until we kind of see some consistent body of work, we can't really take these two teams serious. And Miami falls to that case as well. Like you said, and then just Derek King and how he's going to come back from the injury too. That's another kind of key issue where I think a lot, we really haven't really addressed. But I think that's going to be two of the contributing factors, and just consistency. If they can stay consistent,
I think personally they're on that Florida State path to where every year we keep going, oh no, this is the year, and then we're like, and then this is the year, and I'm just not buying. I just don't see the talent on the field. Mo Murphy, what do you think about the Miami Hurricanes? Like, you buying or selling?
I'm selling. So I know on our previous show. And I've asked my question since this, so I'm going to ask this question and y'all's response of just your face will tell it all. Who is Derek King? Because I bought into him a little bit, but what has he done that he's getting all this praise? Now, granted, I do think he's a fan favorite, so I think he could be a Heisman candidate, and I think he'll have a really good season. You think about it, he's not playing a lot of top-tier defenses, but since when did Derek King, what did he do in Houston for us to think like, I think part of it, this quarterback class, when we talk about for the draft, isn't as strong. I think it's about 3 guys where it's like top heavy. And then I think you're like, well, who's next? And it's Derek King, so they crown him. But what has he done in Houston or even last season pre-injury that makes me say that, yep, he's bringing Miami back. He's that great of a quarterback. So I'm selling because as I bought into the hype and became a hype beast in a conference that I ultimately don't necessarily care about. And then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, why are we hyping Derek King up like he's just been some former, like he's not a grad transfer at Houston who lost his starting spot and then was like, I'm going to transfer. He came to Miami because he opted out. He lost his starting spot.
I don't know if Jeff, I could tell you, but I'll let Jeff speak.
Yeah, like the Houston thing was complicated. So Derek King stopped playing. That was when
that's what it was.
5 games. So he stopped playing because his idiot coach, they got upset. So his idiot coach talked him into stop playing. So when they came back the next year, they'd have a better year.
That's what it was.
That was Dana Holgerson. And he was wrong. I could go back and I could replay my shows on it. Me and my co-host back then were upset. The year before that, I think he was a 50 touchdown guy and had a great season in Oklahoma. He played 5 games, and his coach talked him into sitting out. Then the next year he transferred, so he didn't go back to Houston for that year, which was awesome because they didn't deserve it. They should have never. He'd be in the NFL right now. It's somewhere if they don't talk him into doing that. So that's where it built from. He was a Heisman candidate at Houston. I mean, that's a real thing.
Like, he's really good, but it's just,
I'm just saying he didn't get beat out. He didn't get beat out.
I'm not understanding that, like, he comes to Miami and, like, they've struggled. They've started building but now, like, De'Aaron King coming off an ACL injury is the savior. They're going to beat.
I'll ask this.
They're going to beat Miami. I mean, they're going to beat Bama because De'Aaron King. Like, I'm not understanding this.
I'll pass this question on to Jay. We'll continue this. Jay, if De'Aaron King transferred to North Carolina State, do we think that North Carolina State is that good? I think that's what Mo's getting at. Absolutely not.
Ooh. No. I don't trust De'Aaron King. Like, I was off of the De'Aaron King train when he transferred, when it was him and a wide receiver that ended up stopping play during the middle of the season. And Jeff was right. Just check the stats. He did have a 50 touchdown season the year before, 11 games, 36 through the air, 14 on the ground. I mean, he is a dual threat. I don't think he's that guy with his arm that can win you big time games. And I think what we're seeing right now in college football is right now all the quarterbacks can throw. There was a time where you could be a dual threat. You could have a lesser arm. You could still be very, very successful. Right now, all of the top schools, we're seeing that right now at Ohio State, where Ryan Day's altering his mindset from what Urban Meyer had. Your quarterback has to be able to throw and be very, very accurate. From Dwayne Haskins, which is Ryan Day's first year, to Justin Fields, 2 years. De'Aaron King is not an accurate guy. 63, 64%, that's not going to win you a conference. It might win you your division. Won't win you a conference. Won't win you a playoff game. I personally, Jeff, I'm off on the De'Aaron King thing because if he goes to NC State, he has less talent, and less talent means less successful. So, no, I'm off on that. I buy Miami. I'm going to be a weird one here, simply because it's kind of a little nostalgic. I want Miami to be back, and I think this is kind of like Miami's Indiana University year from last year, Minnesota from 2 years ago. I think that could be what Miami has, kind of like that next step where people expect Miami to play good, but I think they'll play better than expected and wow a lot of people in spite of the deficiencies that De'Aaron King has in his game. I'm going to be the oddball because I just want Miami to be good. I have a hat I was going to wear, but I didn't wear it because decided not to. I simply just want them to be good because it's a better talking point for myself and Jeff and Mo and JP and Couch Coach. That's it.
No, I agree. So then I'll reword it for Justin. You're a Clemson fan. Do you care about the Miami Hurricanes?
No, I don't. But I really just don't. Chris LeBron, please don't fire me tomorrow. I'm just going to say that right here now. But
no, you're good. We got you. We got you.
Good. But in all seriousness, though, the Miami Hurricanes, De'Aaron, King, he's very, like you said, he's inconsistent. Coming off an ACL injury, that's going to be a lot tough. Some people. I think
they're over. They're making, and it was a late season ACL when you got Alabama game 1,
and it's a dual threat quarterback tearing his ACL.
Yeah, he's he's not a dual threat quarterback game 1.
Look at Braxton Miller. When Braxton Miller got injured, he came back. He ended up playing wide receiver, and he wasn't necessarily as explosive. So I think De'Aaron King bases himself on explosiveness, and I don't know. He got Bama week 1.
Yeah, and that's gonna be a tough one for Miami. I'm so sorry, Chris, but I just don't. He's a dynamic player. He's a fan favorite to everybody. But like you said, the deficiencies. Also, Miami's defense is not that great. They overhype the defense so much of it and stuff. They have ways to improve. Manny Diaz is a good coach, but there's improvements around the Miami that needs to be improved. So I don't really buy into it. I mean, are they still kind of like a threat? Perhaps, but they're still not like in favor, with Clemson and all that. I think North Carolina's a bit better just because them 2 cornerbacks they got in North Carolina is one of the best duos in the ACC. Great offensive line that North Carolina has than Miami. You got a Heisman candidate in Sam Howell who improved each and every year. I saw him playing his freshman year, and he was coming. So that's my thoughts. So
that's kind of my thoughts on too. Let's put it this way: if if Miami had North Carolina's recruiting class the last couple of years, everybody be losing their mind of how good they were going to be. Sometimes like we've already been through this with Notre Dame. Like they had all these years. Michigan has had a lot of years like this to where people just can't get past the brand of it. And I think that Miami's kind of in that mold. I think they are getting better. I think Diaz is a good coach, but I don't think they're they may upset somebody, but they're also going to get beat, if that makes any sense. Like maybe they're at Iowa level. Like they'll get you, but at the end of the season, they'll have 2 conference losses and, unexplained or whatever. So, but that being said, I'm rooting for Derek King. He was one of my original talking points when I started podcasting. I hope the kid, does great and I hope he lives through the Alabama game, and does make it to the NFL because I've always been rooting for him. So that was the ACC preview. I don't claim to be an ACC expert. That's why I had these geniuses on with me. So I want to thank Justin Payton. I want to thank Jay Stevens from the Jay Stevens podcast. I want to thank Couch Coach Live from Couch Coach Live podcast. Thank Mo from the Up in Flames podcast. You can find, everybody on the Off the Ball Network. You can find us on Twitter. These guys are putting up great work all the time. Now, if you're watching live, you can stick around. We're getting ready to roll this into one of the funnest conversations that I've had since I started this podcast. If you're listening to the audio version, that's great. All you got to do is click up, and, this is going to be on there too. So, if you're driving, be careful or just let it play, however that works. But so that's what we're going to do. So we'll say thank you to these gentlemen, and, we'll be right back. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right.
What is up? Here we go. This is Jeff Needs Sports. We got a great topic tonight. This is one of my this kind of like get you pumped up for college football. Think about the past, like just get you ready. We're in the middle of summer. It's great. 2-a-days are starting up, and we're gonna have one of the probably the best conversations since I started this podcast. We're doing our lifetime top 3 college football games, and what I mean by that is this isn't our greatest college football games ever because we weren't alive in the 50s when they played. We didn't see Army, Navy play in the 40s and all that. We are here to talk about the best games that us as individuals ever watched. And I've got 4 really smart, really astute guys with me to do this tonight. I've got Justin Payton from the Off the Ball Network. He's our YouTube guru. I've got Jay Stevens from the Jay Stevens podcast. He's also does Locked On Buckeyes podcast. Maybe wants to check that out. I got Mo from Up in Flames, VP of the Off the Ball Network. Dash Radio sensation. It's things are going off, and I got Couch Coach Live. You guys all know his gorgeous face from several podcasts. He's on OTBN. He's on See You Sundays. Everything, man. These are my counterparts. And tonight we're talking about once again our lifetime top 3 college football games. That we've ever seen. So I'm gonna put this up there. There we go. Hold on, let me blow this up, gentlemen. We can't let Vince go like that. There we go. There's our start there. So I thought of this subject, and I thought, a lot of times, we talk about the all-time greatest games or whatever, but like I said at the opening, we haven't necessarily watched them. We haven't seen them. We've heard about them. I mean, credit to you guys. Some of you guys are way younger than me. Some of you guys are close to my age. But anyway, we haven't watched the same game. So I thought I want to know from, a viewer perspective, what was our top 3 games of all time. So what we're going to do here, we're going to go around. We're going to go around, and I'll just ask like, what's your number 3 is. We'll start with your 3, and then you give us like 60 seconds on why, and we'll move around, and then everybody will just kind of jump in and we'll talk about the games or whatever. It's going to be a free for all. It's going to be a lot of fun. So who wants to start? I'll just ask who wants to go first. Mo wants to go first. So,
are we saying all 3 or just we're going like 3 and then all go around and then we'll go 2 and then go all.
Now
How
you
we
just
doing
you just give us number 3. Let's do it that way. I'm glad you brought that up because I should have clarified that. So Mo, give us your number 3 favorite game you ever watched.
So this might surprise people. Some people might have forgotten about this. Some people might not even watch this because it is one of the deadest rivalries in rivalry week of all time. But I'm going to go in 2018 when LSU played Texas A&M, 74-72, 7 overtimes. So that night resonates with me a lot. First off, one of my best friends is an LSU fan. We watching it at his house. He ends up at the hospital that night. He punches his window, breaks his hand because of the way that LSU lost. So, but that was, if you really think about it, if I tell you I watched the game that went into 7 overtimes, the score was 74-72.
Yeah.
If y'all remember the play where Kellen Mond was down, they thought his knee hit the ground and then it didn't. You would think, man, that's got to be the greatest game you've ever watched. And I know we're going to get into the list of, bringing up, but to me, that's number 3 on a long list of great games I watched. But that's my number 3. Just that was a great 7 overtime, 74-72. That's what you can want in a rivalry that's really not known to be a rivalry.
Yo, some of those late SEC games can get wild. I am old enough, just like to interject. I was watching the night. I don't know if you guys have heard about the earthquake game at LSU when it was Auburn LSU. It was probably 94, I think it was, or 95, and it registered. The crowd got so crazy that it registered on a Richter scale that there was an earthquake in the area. Like I was watching that game. I've been wanting to get to the Bayou ever since. So you know what, Couch Coach, why don't you go now? What's your number 3 game, Couch?
It's the 2017 National Championship, Alabama versus Clemson. This was a matchup where, and Justin knows this, Clemson was going to always be Clemson. Clemson. There was a situation where Clemson used to always choke in bad and game winning situations. This really changed the course of Clemson. We looked at Deshaun Watson the previous year where he pretty much almost had opportunity to win that game against Alabama in the previous year. And then once again, he proved, and they were down 10-0. They came back and he threw that pass to your boy Hunter Winthrow. So yeah, that
the
was
rough play. You talking
yeah.
about the rough play?
Yeah, that goes into and that amplified Clemson and the ACC.
Yeah, terrific game. Actually, it's on my list. JP, you go next, man. What's number 3 on your list?
Yeah, I have Clemson versus USC, November 29th of 2014. Deshaun Watson's freshman year, played on a partially torn ACL, destroyed USC 35-17, 14 out of 19, 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, 13 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Running the ball. It was the 5th consecutive game. It was the 6th game. But we lost 5 in a row to USC with Javion Clowney's team and Melvin Ingram and all of them, Connor Shaw and all of them. But it just felt so good, and I was there in the crowd, and just the pain of the USC.
You were there,
yeah. The pain of the USC people. I just loved it, and I just laughed at them, and I knew that when I saw Deshaun Watson play, he was special.
Okay, so I got 2 follow-ups before we get to Jay Stevens. I want everybody to know that's listening. If you're not from the South, when he says USC, he's talking about the University of South Carolina, and that's cool. And I mean a compliment, but I
was so confused, Jeff. I thought he was talking about Southern California.
I was lost for a second. Once he said Jadeveon, I was like, oh, okay. I was like, wait, the Trojans.
But that's cool though. I have
USC of the South.
I have zero problem.
Yeah,
with that
USC of the South.
Friends in South Carolina, and they're like, "No, we're USC." So I just want to clarify that. That was really, and just as a side note, man, we kind of have lost track of how good Deshaun Watson was and his story and all that in college football. And I know it's weird time right now, but I'm saying to that point, like it was amazing. But that's a great choice, man. I like that. Jay Stevens, I know you got one on here. I got to guess at what this one is for Jay.
So this is the one that got me into Ohio State. I'm gonna change my order on purpose. This is the one that got me into Ohio State. Well, I was already a fan. But the 03 Fiesta Bowl, Miami Hurricanes versus Ohio State Buckeyes, the national championship game. Larry Coker takes over for Butch Davis, who had a lot of talent, had one of the most talented teams ever assembled. I think it's the most talented team ever assembled in college football.
I don't even think it's close, Jay. I don't even think it's close.
I'm glad you said that because somebody tried to push me on that one day, and I was like, what are you talking about? But Ohio State was huge underdogs, and I'm a youngster. I'm getting into college football, trying to find a team to love, trying to find a team that's hopefully local that I can follow and that I can grow to love. I already loved Maurice Claret the entire season. And there was that one play that Sean Taylor picks off Craig Krenzel. Going up the left sideline, has the ball inside the right-hand arm on the inside. I recently watched this play, so I could kind of replay it in my head. And Maurice Claret comes up, strips the ball. He didn't strip the ball. He tackles him and causes a fumble. Before he goes down, he takes the ball out of Sean Taylor's hands, gets up, and has the ball in his hand. And that kind of cemented that love for the Ohio State Buckeyes as a youngster. Yes, I was 12 or 13 at the time, but that right there, that play, and really Ohio State beating the juggernaut that the Miami Hurricanes were. And I was in awe of Ken Dorsey. Wasn't the best quarterback, but I was just in awe that somebody could be in college and win all those games. In Ohio State, the Buckeyes beat him and the rest of his team. That right there, Jeff, number 3 on my list, the 03 Fiesta Bowl. I will always remember that game.
Man, I can't believe that's number 3. So that's awesome.
That team made me love Ohio State. Just real quick, I just want to speak on that.
No, go ahead, man. We can talk.
I'm going to put my age in perspective.
I just want to tease everybody. We got a show coming up about this game, just so everybody.
Yeah, we do. I just want to teach. So my age, when Jay says he was 12 or 13, so I'm about 6, 7 years. I was 7 years old, about to be 8. I remember that game like it was yesterday. That team I was born to be a Buckeye, everybody from Columbus and stuff. But that game, that year, that team, they had 2 running backs. They had Maurice Claret and they had Maurice Hall.
Yes.
My name is Maurice. That is why Maurice Claret was the greatest thing walking in my eyes. And that year is the exact reason why, like, I am so diehard. I mean, I was born to be a Buckeye, but that year started becoming old enough to really understand sports. So that game, but it didn't reach my list. But that is why that game is why I love Ohio State. So me and Jay kind of fell in love with Ohio State at the same time, just different ages.
Yeah, that was a good game. And
you think?
Right. And we want to date ourselves. Shout out to Maurice Claret, class of 2002, a fellow class 2002 guy. So we right the same age. So, yeah, like you said, that was a situation where we didn't think Miami had no business even being in that game, because we looked at Miami was a situation where there was like a foregone conclusion. Oh, they're gonna go back to back, because at that time, this was before social media. We all just had one voice, which was the media. So at that time, everybody it was cooked in our brain and said, hey, Ohio State don't even have a chance. And
it was fair. It was fair though. Like Ohio State had eked by. That was back when they were, I mean, like imagine there was a time they were winning games. You know, I think the Michigan game, I think both teams scored under 20 or right at 20. Like when you really look back at I've got a coffee mug that has every score from the 02 season on it, and I drink out of it every game day, right? And I look at those scores, I look at the scores, and I'm like, oh my God. I was like, I can't believe I didn't have a heart attack. Like the Purdue game.
Holy Buckeye.
The Holy Buckeye. Like there was a lot of them. Shout out to Will Allen too. He had the 3 game clinching interceptions, in that season anyway. So that's not on my list yet, but it is without a doubt one of the greatest games ever played. Number 3 on my list, I'm going to piggyback off Coach. It was that Clemson versus Bama, that 2017 game. And it was just one of those, like I went back and watched it on YouTube to make sure I remembered it like I did, because I was like, man, I think that was a really great game. I looked, that game was within a touchdown the whole game, which in today's, I know this sounds crazy, today's 4 years later or whatever, but in today's, game, if you're within 2 touchdowns, you're fine. That game was within a touchdown the whole time. I think the forgotten thing is that Jalen Hurts had that game won. Jalen Hurts had the go-ahead touchdown. Yep. It looked like that game was over. Alabama was going to win back-to-back championships, and Deshaun Watson had a gutsy, terrific drive. I mean, he got beat up a little bit. Yep. The rub play is what it is, but everybody knew he was going to run it, and you can defend it. It's been broken down over the years. Seattle Seahawks famously tried to run it and failed. Like there's all these things, but regardless, it was a fantastic drive by Watson. He closed off a fantastic career. So just as a fan of the game, my number 3 is Clemson versus Alabama, 2017 national champ. So Mo went first last time. Let's go with JP. Your number 2 game on the list, man.
That was actually my number 2 list. Was the
okay? Go ahead.
Championship game. Just to pick it off what y'all said too as well. I'm gonna go a little bit different. It was a revenge game for us because we lost in 2016. 45-40. Everybody forgot that was the year with the Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson Heisman argument. Because I was for Lamar Jackson winning the Heisman and stuff, but everybody was like, "Oh, Deshaun should have won him because he has a better team and everything." But Deshaun Watson, 420 yards and I think it was like 3 touchdowns. Played unbelievable, and yeah, like I said,
he played great in the year before, by the way.
He did too, yeah, exactly. And they just couldn't get over the hump. You had that defensive line with Dexter Lawrence and Christian Wilkins. Just monster. They had some monster players. But yeah, Watson was just unbelievable, and it was just like the start of Clemson, just becoming that recognizable team. But we still didn't get our respect though, because stupid ESPN Stephen A. Smith was like, "Oh, Alabama is so much better than this." Yeah. So that was my number 2 game, is the Alabama Clemson 2017.
And like I said, it was a great game. I'm glad that you're on here to talk about it from a fan's perspective, because I've got a game on here that I might be impartial to. So let's mess it up here. Mo from Up in Flames, man. What's your number 2 game?
2006 Rose Bowl, USC national championship.
Wait, okay. I'm gonna pause here. Is this how many times? Whose list is this game on? Just Mo. Okay. So okay. So we'll wait. Yeah.
You forgot about that game. All right. Anyways, USC Texas. 41-38. We all know. I mean, that was one of the best. That's one of the best national championship games to ever be played. And a lot of times, I remember games, they resonate with me. So Jeff cracks a joke because of my age. Was I allowed to stay up late that night? So let me tell you, I was gonna miss that game that night.
Wait. Let's not act like full disclosure. Mo's the same age as my son. Like, I had a right to ask. And
I
just want to defend myself. I let my son stay up to watch that game. I actually made him stay up to watch that game because I'm like, I don't know what's happening here, man. But because as an Ohio State fan, we were a part of that season. Vince Young famously said the toughest team he played all year was Ohio State that year. If it wasn't for Troy Smith taking like $500, we don't know what that season would have been. That's a different story.
Yeah. So I remember that night. So I was going to miss that national championship game, 2006. I was 10, about to be 11. I was going to miss that game because the Ringling Brothers, Ringling Brothers, the circus was in town, bro. The circus was in town on Monday night on the national championship game. Well, my uncle didn't want to go. I didn't want to go. And my little cousin didn't want to go. We wanted to watch the game, but our family, me and my uncle, family, if y'all listening, I apologize that I'm bringing this to light years later. Me and my uncle concocted a story that I'm terrified of clowns. Well, since then, I was known to be terrified of clowns, so we could go back home and watch the national championship game. So from there on out, I had to claim that I was afraid of clowns to not skip out on the Ringling Brothers. Well, really, I never wanted to go anyway because I didn't want to miss that game.
Oh my gosh!
Vince Young was my favorite player at that time, like Reggie Bush, Vince Young. Just imagine being late elementary, about to be in middle school. Yeah. Missing out on Vince Young playing against Reggie Bush. So we concocted a story that I was terrified of clowns. So then he ended up taking me home. We drove back across the bridge, made it back in time for the start of the game, and we watched the game. So it was one of the greatest games I've ever watched on top of that.
It was classic.
Mo, I don't want to be insensitive. Is your uncle still with us?
Yes, he is.
Okay, shout out to the greatest uncle of all time.
Yeah,
you had an Uncle Jeff, man. He was there for you.
He was like, he knew we both wanted to watch it, and he didn't want to miss the game either. And so he was like, He was like, what if you tell your mom you're afraid of clowns? You think it'll work? And I was like,
wait a minute. You could have said like at that age, man, you could have said stomach ache, headache. You could have said so many things. You're like, wait a minute, I can't.
But I was feeling fine all day, so it had to be like, why don't you want to go? Because I really didn't want to go, but I couldn't tell my mom I don't want to go.
So who did you have to convince? Like who was he? He came up with the story for a reason. So who did he know? Like, we got to have a good story to get past so-and-so. Was it your mom's?
My mom, his sister, and
his
sister. Wife, my aunt.
It all.
So he knew like neither one of them was going to go for that because my aunt, she's like a second mom to me. So like they knew she had the juice to say, no, you're not. You're fine. So, like if I said I'm sick.
Wait a minute. Now I got let's continue here for a second. Did you and Unc just like get to hang out at the crib by yourself and like just
it was just me, him,
football?
And his son, my little cousin. It was just us three. Literally just us three watching the national championship.
That's one of the greatest college football stories I've ever told. So I'm gonna go to Jay Stevens next since he doesn't have the same game, and then we'll kind of come back around. So Jay Stevens, what was your number 2 game, man?
So I want to butcher this really quickly. I gave you the wrong order of mine, so I'm just going to give you mine at a random order. The 03 Fiesta Bowl was not number 3. I looked at my paper, started talking, and I was like, wait, I messed up. So I was going to tell you a story. At the end, I'll tell you what the order is. It'll make more sense at the end. So the 2014 Big Ten Championship game, the very first Ohio State football game I ever attended. Jeff, I know you were there, but we did not know each other at that time.
Nope.
So I go there with my buddy Mike and his wife, Caitlin. I go to games by myself all the time, and I got my ticket at the last minute. So they're sitting in the end zone. I'm sitting in the 400 section by myself. But
that's where I was.
Jeff,
we were in the same
Y'all were next to each other.
Probably. I'm sitting right next to Taylor Decker's English teacher from high school. And she's sitting there just telling me all the history. Taylor Decker did this. Is an offensive lineman from Ohio State, who, for those of you that don't know. And she's telling me all the history. Oh, he did this. He did that. He called me. Are you coming to the game? Yeah, I'll be there. And she's like, you better win for me. I'm not driving to Indianapolis if you don't win for me. And she's all excited about this. Then all of a sudden, Jeff, you're there, saw the magic, 59-0. Words are trying to describe what happened that night.
You can't
really put it into justice. I don't know what happened. What got into Cardale Jones in his arm, but he threw a couple bomb touchdowns. Ezekiel Elliott went off. And the most amazing thing may not have been the offense, Jeff. The Wisconsin offense did not cross the 50-yard line to the very last play of the game.
With a Heisman running back.
They did a Heisman contender.
Heisman running back.
Melvin Gordon.
59-0. Lucas Oil Stadium. My very next game, I can't tell you yet, but there's a story behind that one as well as why these are all special to me for different reasons. They have some type of value, but that one, the very first time I go to an Ohio State Buckeye football game, been a fan for a very long time. All of a sudden, they bring the hammer and the smackdown to the Wisconsin Badgers. In Wisconsin, I mean, they haven't really been the same ever since. I mean, they just had a quarterback leave to go to Notre Dame, and we'll see what Graham Mertz can do.
Well, and I just want to touch on this because that was such a great game. I was there. This barely missed my list, so I'm glad you brought it up, Jay. Just to refresh everybody's memory, that was a game we're going into. JT Barrett broke his leg against Michigan. Cardale Jones came in. It was like, what are we going to do now? We were down in the playoff rankings. This was the first year of the playoff rankings, so nobody has any clue how it's going to go. All these things. The only chance Ohio State had was of destroying a good Wisconsin team, and it was it's still it's probably the most dominant performance I've seen against a good team to this day. And if you go back and watch it, you'll see the same thing I did. And that was a cool game. So I bought tickets to that game 2 weeks ahead of time because we clinched I don't even know what it was called back in, Jay. It was still probably the leaders and legends or whatever. But Ohio State clinched a spot in the game before Michigan, so tickets were pretty cheap. So I already had tickets to the game before the Michigan game, before JT gets hurt. He gets hurt, and I'm like, people were actually asking me like, "Oh, you still going to go?" Whatever. And I'm like, "No, I'll go. We'll see what happens." Blah blah blah. It's not like Cardale Jones wasn't next man up. Like he wasn't the guy like. you know, it's not like it is now.
Third string quarterback.
Because Braxton Miller got hurt before the
Virginia Tech game. First game of the season against Virginia Tech.
And we're
right before the season because JT Barrett had to take over and we won that game. And Virginia Tech was really good. They had the two brothers at corner. And real quick, just on that game, do y'all remember what happened? What was it? 3 to 4 days ago, or 3 to 4 days before the game? One of the players was found, deceased, and so that played that factor into, and all the players were like, we know him, so it was like, how was that going to affect them? And they kind of were like, oh, we're going to play. It was special,
and the crowd was. I mean, if it wasn't 90%, it might have been 95% Ohio State. Like, it's hard to explain to people, what that was like. I talked to the sousaphone player before we went in. If anybody knows, that's the guy that dots the I. Like, I met him, like, walking in, like, everything just kept coming up just perfect that night. It was the greatest game I ever watched. So I'm glad that Jay brought that up. So now, Couch Coach Live, what's number 2 on your list?
My number 2 is I got to inject some UNC in this conversation tonight, fellas. November 21st, 2015 will live a day in infamy. The Carolina Tar Heels coming into Blacksburg 9-1. This was Frank Beamer's last home game. We sent him out with a loss.
Yes.
It was a great game. Went to overtime. Marquise Williams hit Quashad Davis, and all she wrote. What was funny about this game and this whole circumstance? Now, mind you, we played the game early, and then the basketball team loses the University of North Iowa, like the afternoon. Everybody's like, "You heard about Carolina losing?" And I'm like, I don't care. Like, we just beat Virginia Tech with 10-1, and that 2015 was a kind of a, I think to me was a great year. It was JP. We all know that onside kick was some BS, but I digress. But that was a team of destiny that fell a little short on the onside kick, but I digress, and that was my number 2 for the of all time great.
Oh, that's not my number 2 is Texas USC in the 06 Rose Bowl, the BCS National Championship game. I think we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second. And it's just a terrific game. And I want to say about North Carolina, they always bring the best unis to the field. Like, when I love to watch a North Carolina Virginia Tech game, I really like that. When I really think about it, I really like ACC football, and I like the matchups, and I just like the look of it. Stuff like that. So that's a great one. So I'll start off with number 1 here. I haven't gone first a lot. My number 1 game well, I mean, I can't get no. My number 1 game of all time that I just watched, and it's one of the greatest football games ever played. It's OSU Miami, the 03 Fiesta Bowl, the national championship game. Yeah. It is like to watch it because and here's why that, like, it's, and especially like my age does factor into this, because it is hard to explain to anybody under the age of, I mean, I'll be honest, under the age of like 35, what Ohio State was like, the 80s and 90s leading up to 2000, and how we would never get over the hump. And I mean, all these things we eked by and got this undefeated season in 2002. And you guys already talked about it, went up against an apps. We thought this is one of the games, like, we all gathered around, we made chicken wings, had the chips out, had some drinks, and we're like, man, I can't believe we're here. We're playing the best game ever. Whatever happens. And I'm telling you what, when those teams ran out onto that field, and the crowd went nuts, and it was 75%, Ohio State, that's when everybody's ears perked up, and we're like, whoa, wait a minute. And like, you could see Miami, like, wait a minute, I didn't, like, if you really go back and watch, I'm telling you, this is how it went. And they're like, I didn't know it was going to be this way. And I mean, Craig Krenzel, an average, college quarterback, is the leading rusher in the game. The Willis McGahee injury, the Maurice Claret gets the interception back with the strip, the strip fumble, the overtime, the call. Everybody knows about the call. The non-calls, the punt return. Ken Dorsey getting knocked out for a play, which was probably the biggest play of the game that nobody remembers, that he got knocked out. Walter Payton's son was the quarterback or the running back at the end of the game. All these things. Keith Jackson, one of his, truly great games of all time. Just the look of it, the feel of it. It's still to this day the greatest. Well, it's one of the greatest sporting events I ever watched. I think maybe 2013 Spurs Heat is up there, but it's in that category of experiences. And I happen to be a fan. So like when you combine that in, like it's no question. My number one is OSU Miami 03 BCS National Championship game. So next we'll go to Justin, man. What's your number one game you ever watched?
Man, shout out to the Furman Paladins. We won the SoCon Conference that year. And, in the playoffs, we beat South Carolina State. But on that day after we beat South Carolina State, I never thought in my wildest dreams it would happen. But Alabama versus Auburn, the Iron Bowl, November 30th, 2013.
Yes.
I thought you was going to Furman, and I'm like,
no, I was on board.
Let's hear this. I thought it was going to be a special story behind that. I thought, I don't know.
We were watching the game on the bus.
Furman,
we beat SC State. But Chris Harris, returning back at the Alabama 57-yard field goal came short, and Chris Harris returning it back for a game-winning touchdown. And everybody was jumping on top of him and everything. It was just unbelievable. Alabama undefeated, 10-point favorite, and they just crumble. But that was my number one favorite just because that play by Chris Harris is probably the greatest college football play I ever seen or ever
It might be the greatest college football play in history.
And the crowd was just hype. They were hype.
It was crazy. I remember that game. That game was crazy.
Yeah. So
I remember that was one of those plays to where we were out eating, getting some drinks, watching the game. Like, oh, it's a good game, And I'm like, well, yeah, it's the Iron Bowl, whatever. Then we get back to my buddy's house and we turn it on and we're sitting there and we're just kind of looking over. Then you look back over and we're like, oh, they're gonna do this, and all of a sudden we're looking at each other like, what did we just see?
Yeah,
did we just see the greatest play in college football history. You don't know when it's gonna happen, but that's a good one. Yeah. So. All right, let's go to who wants to go next?
I'll go because
let's go, Mo. He's
upset right now because I'm upset right now. I'm really surprised this game hasn't hit anybody's list, especially Jeff and Jay. I know we have our special stories, but 2006, something else great happened that year. It was like the national championship before the national championship. It was the game that got contemplated whether we were going to see a replay of this matchup in the BCS era.
Mo, I'm going to stop
Ohio State
Mo, you said
Michigan.
National Championship game. I thought if you're going to talk about the Ohio State Florida National Championship,
no. That broke my heart.
Yeah, Jay almost
about to kill me. No, I'm saying that was the national championship game before Ohio State versus Michigan. 42-39, number one versus number two. Yeah. Both teams undefeated. Essentially, they were playing for a national championship berth. And also, everybody was looking and was like, if it's a close game, the way it was, 42-39, could we see the rematch for the national championship with an Ohio State versus Michigan? I don't know if the rest of the world would have wanted to see it.
I wish.
But I would have loved to seen that team run it back. Now, I know Ted Ginn broke his leg and, or broke his ankle against Florida. I understand that, but that wouldn't happen because maybe he doesn't return the kick and everybody jump on him. But that game, I think Ohio State and Michigan fans, especially Michigan fans, I wanted to run it back with Michigan because that was such a toss-up game to see the greatest rivalry in college football link up and play against each other in the national championship. Bro, the ratings would have probably been the highest rated game.
They actually moved that game. So that game
to a night game. It's usually at 12 o'clock. They moved it to a night game.
They moved it at 5 o'clock. 3:30 kick, because I listened to Bobby Carpenter talk about that recently. It was a 3:30 kick because of Big Ten's idiot selves. They will not allow night games in November.
Yep.
So 3:30 was the latest time they could get the kickoff. It ends at night, starts with some little
that's what it was.
But that was it.
That was I literally just
Bo Schembechler died. Bo Schembechler died the night before.
Yeah. I just remember everything first off, to see Ohio State and Michigan be able to, in the greatest rivalry of all time, we always look forward to that matchup, but to actually play, and it's more than for Big Ten rights, for bragging rights of the game, but we're playing to compete for a national championship. And if it was a close game, we could see this team again. Like, I think they robbed the rest of the country of seeing the greatest rivalry ever, being able to link back up in the national championship for what was considered. It was literally considered. This happened in November after the national championship that we watched with USC and Texas, and it was considered game of the century. After probably one of the games that gets an argument for greatest game of all time in Texas and USC, that happened in the following later in that year in November. So that game, to me, that's number one. When I talk about, that's the best Ohio State game I've ever watched, along with the other great
awesome.
ones. But that game was just, for everything that it means on a yearly basis.
Beanie Wells, Anthony Gonzalez. I can literally replay that game in my head. I love that game. I watch it yearly. If Ohio State finishes the season off, that's probably one of the greatest games ever. But I think the beat down to Florida took away from that game. Let's just be honest, like when it was all said and done. But it was still fantastic. I loved it. It was,
it diminished the importance of that game.
It did. It really did.
It did. Because
the game itself was really good. But that
was considered game of the century after watching what we thought might have been the greatest game we've ever seen. Like,
that's a good point. It was
that USC and Texas game was what argued up until that Ohio State Michigan game was played. USC versus Texas was considered, is this the greatest game of all time that we've ever seen in college football? And then boom, they label this game of the century. So that goes to show you how great of a game it was, coming off the high of seeing Vince Young and Reggie Bush.
And I think as much as I love the game, I think we can look now, and there's been several, whether it's Alabama, LSU, a couple Alabama, Florida games. Like, I think other games have got close to matching that. Maybe not as a fan like we are, Mo, but I think other games have approached that, only because Michigan and Ohio State didn't finish that season off. They both lost their bowl games. I think that really took away from that game. As much fun as it was to watch, it doesn't take away from the moment. 42-39 in an era that wasn't 42 points in a game. Like, if you score 42 as a team, it was a blowout in a sense. Like, now that's a normal score for two really good teams. As a season, that's the greatest football season I ever watched. Like, top to bottom, that was the funnest football season I ever watched. So, Couch Coach Live, your number one game.
Texas versus USC 2006. That was just a classic game. USC coming in with a 34-game winning streak. This is actually the first game that had two Heisman Trophy winners playing on the same team, and Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush, which I don't know if we still count that 2005. That's here no.
I do. Yeah, I do. He won that Heisman. I don't care.
But we're just with a joke. But this was another one. It wasn't necessarily like Miami and Ohio State 2002 as far as Ohio State being like the underdog. Texas had a puncher's chance, but this is another one where we looked at USC as this dynastic type of team at that particular time, and just like what Vince Young did, he just put those guys over his shoulder, and that goes down. That was one of those games where it was back and forth. And then the whole patch of the Rose Bowl itself. I'm a big fan I love the Rose Bowl. I just love the fact when you first get in the scenic background of the mountains, and then when the sun sets, I'm like, whoa, Nelly.
Let's before we get to Jay, because this isn't Jay's number one. So before we get to that, let's just once again just take a second on this game. This is one of those unargued greatest games in the history of sports. You had Vince Young, that he had just a dynamic year. He had a dynamic personality. The look at, then Coach already talked about it. You had this USC juggernaut rolling into it. They had just destroyed Oklahoma the year before. For the national championship. They were unstoppable, but it was one of those, like, even the look of it just the way the lights and the cameras look at the Rose Bowl, it just looked great. The uniforms were so opposite, but yet they were awesome. I remember Vince had, if you guys remember, one of the horns on the emblem was turned up, just one of those weird little notes about it, just all these things. He made every play. it came down to that 4th and 1. So, and I mean, Reggie Bush, if you guys remember, like he really couldn't get off that game. Like they bottled him up. He had the one huge touchdown, but he couldn't get off. Then it comes down to the 4th and 1. They give it to Lindell White instead of Reggie. They stop him. I mean, the game is over. They give the ball to Vince. He does what he does. Keith Jackson it's his last game. I believe that's the last game he called.
It was.
Yeah. It's still one of the greatest game he called, him and Dan Fouts together. It was just this. I just remember sitting there on the couch and, as mad as I was that Ohio State wasn't in it that year, because they were really good that year. That's the year they beat Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl and Brady Quinn. And it was just one of those. But then it was one of those games, like once you let yourself get wrapped up in it, you didn't even have to care. You didn't have to care about who was playing. You just were just like wrapped up in the game. Like, I don't even care what happens. Like, I hope it goes on forever kind of games. It's just one of the just best looking, most historic games ever played, without a doubt. So, all right, Jay Stevens, what was your number one game you've ever seen?
Remember, I butchered my order, so it's just a random game.
No, go ahead, man.
I'll tell you my order here in a second. So you and Mo already have heard about part of this story. I didn't tell the entire story about why this game means so much to me. It was Alabama, Ole Miss, 2014, Katy Perry there at game day. And this was not the game. I talked to you guys last time. This was not the game when Laquan Treadwell broke his leg. That happened That happened maybe a month after that. I actually had to go look that up. So there was a portion of my life that I could not enjoy college football for as much as I wanted to. I didn't get to watch it every single week. And so for that reason, this season meant so much because I was able to watch all day, every day. I moved back home with my parents for some specific reasons. And I'm sitting there watching that game. And all my life, I couldn't stand Alabama. Even during like their bad period, I just couldn't stand the Alabama Crimson Tide. So all of a sudden, this game comes on. I'm yelling, "Go, Bo! Go, Bo!" Bo Wallace is doing his thing. And then he throws a touchdown late with 5.5 minutes left. A go-ahead touchdown, tied at 17-17. Throws another touchdown at the end of the game, 23-17 to the right side of the end zone. And then all of a sudden, little 5'9" Senquez Golson catches an interception over O.J. Howard. Blake Sims drives all the way very quickly, catches the interception with
Blake Sims
with like 40 seconds left in the game. And for some reason, I told Mo's like, "Why do you love Ole Miss so much?" It's partly because of this game. Katy Perry's part of the reason. Start the day with Katy Perry on game day. End the day, we'll start going to the evening with Ole Miss beating Alabama. After the game, all the fans rushed the field. They broke down the goalpost. They have part of the goalpost in the street. I mean, they were going crazy. And that's the reason Jake's love for Ole Miss is there. If there's an SEC game Jake can go to, it's Ole Miss. Get me to the Grove, and your boy will be happy.
So what was your rankings, Jay? What was your rankings?
So the ranking it's going to make a whole lot more sense now. Number one is going to be Fiesta Bowl, 03 Fiesta Bowl. Number two will be the Ole Miss game just for the sentimental value. 03 will be the Big Ten championship game. First game, you would think, Jay, first game you went to Ohio State, that should be number one. No, that goes number three. It's an amazing game. The sentimental value for the Ole Miss win, that's number two. And Maurice Clarett, man. You can't forget Mike Doss. You can't forget that Ohio State had a white corner out there as well. Can't forget that with Dustin Fox. I mean, that team was just so many pro. I think one thing forgot about that game, Jeff. So many pros on both sides of the ball. You think about the 06 Rose Bowl with USC Texas. There's pros on both sides of the ball there. But that Miami versus Ohio State game, pros on both sides. Oh, yeah. Pros that had good careers on both. If Mike Doss doesn't get hurt in Indianapolis, he goes on and has a 10+ year career, a couple Pro Bowls. Get some postseason honors. There's so many things about that game right there. That Fiesta Bowl, BCS National Championship game, which I prefer. Got to say this, I prefer that over the committee because I know what's coming, not the unexpected. So that's part of the reason as well.
I do miss the BCS era. I know a lot of people weren't big fans of it, but I miss it because I felt like all the other bowl games meant something.
Yeah.
They outside of the playoffs, these players sit. You didn't see that I could recall. I know Jeff would probably, and Jay, y'all would probably, and Couch Coach, y'all be able to recall a little bit better. But like the Rose Bowl, ultimately playing in the Rose Bowl, Ohio State winning the Big Ten, playing against USC or Oregon or whoever won, the Pac-12. You played for that. in that season. Like winning the Rose Bowl was your national championship if you weren't number 1 or number 2. Winning the Sugar Bowl from being a Big 12 team was your national championship unless you were number 1 or number 2. But those other games, those were those conferences' national championship. So I missed that all those games really meant somewhere. Like now, if it's not the playoff game, the Orange Bowl may not mean that much because it's not a playoff game. So now players sit. We see UCF could come in and backdoor and claim they're the national champions because they could play a team with 10 starters that decided not to play. So that's why I missed the BCS. As flawed as a lot of people did think it was, it did have its flaws. It definitely did because you were only determining 2 guys to compete for a national championship. We seen who was it that tied for a national championship?
USC,
1 year, like
Oklahoma, or Oklahoma,
USC,
Oklahoma, Texas, something like that.
I
Or
believe you're
LSU,
talking about
did LSU tie?
Michigan
It
and
might have been
Nebraska.
LSU. LSU.
Was it LSU with Nick Saban? Didn't he tie with Oklahoma for his national championship?
No, he did. It was
beat-
like 03 or 04. There was somebody
Oklahoma
that
tied with somebody. It was considered a
Oklahoma.
tie.
I think it was Oklahoma LSU because I feel like it was Saban. It was Saban.
It was Saban.
The AP voted for not the AP. The coaches poll voted for USC that year. So USC claims that national championship, but LSU beat Oklahoma in the BCS championship.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
I
There
do
you
not
go.
acknowledge that USC year because they just whined their way into it because the coaches were upset about the BCS. That was a protest is what the coaches did. And USC claims that as a championship. But that's a whole other story.
Yeah, that's a whole nother show. Because
I
remember that.
There was the Auburn year, like there's all these things, but
There's flaws within every system.
yes,
No matter
there
what,
you
I
go.
think we're going to see flaws within every
pretty
system.
soon in 20 years we're going to see an 8-4 Georgia Tech team win the national championship and everybody's going to go the playoffs like it's never going to be right.
It shouldn't be 16 teams. Like
That's
we're going to
like
go
that-
from
that's
8
like
to 10 to 16.
Yeah.
And
I think the UConn team from 2011 or whatever in college basketball that was not that good most of the season, got hot at the end and won the national championship. And you look back, you're like, their record doesn't say they're the best team in college basketball.
Yeah.
Well, the system says they could get in, and it can happen.
But they ran. That was the year Kemba had that miraculous run and ran through the Big East, and then ran through the tournament. And then didn't they follow it up? What was it? Was it 2 years later, or was it when Shabazz Napier did the same thing?
It was Shabazz Napier's year, but they were bad. Not the 2011 year. Shabazz Napier's year, they weren't the best.
Yeah, they were bad, and he ran through the Big East and ran through the tournament. And UConn, he had a Kemba-like run in the Big East tournament, and in the in the NCAA tournament, and ended up winning. So it was just like it was a one-man show. But that's what I used to love about the NCAA tournament. You seen guys like, I don't know if anybody remember this. I don't know how invested everybody. I know Couch Coach. Do y'all remember Northern Iowa, Al Farouk Amanesh?
Yeah.
Do y'all remember that run he went on? Would they go to the Sweet 16 that year? And he was like Jimmer Fredette before Jimmer Fredette ever hit the court. People don't. You really got to know, like Al Farouk Amanesh. I thought he was amazing. He was Jimmer before we actually saw Jimmer Fredette. Northern Iowa was on the map that year.
I remember. And it's a thing that you never know, though, because I remember Steph Curry doing it.
Yes.
I can remember the Steph Curry run at Davidson and being like, oh, that's cute. Not knowing he was going to change basketball forever. So
not knowing
that's an argument. Maybe that's an argument
of all time.
Yeah, maybe that's an argument for playoffs. Like, I don't know. So anyway, gentlemen, this has been a blast. I know this was a hard list to come up with, but I think it was a lot of fun. It was just fun to sit here and talk ball, for a while. Talk about these great games. I'm ready for the season. I hope everybody out there, like this kind of gets you pumped up. Feel free to let us know what your favorite games are and why. We're here for it. So I'm Jeff from Jeff Needs Sports Podcast. This has been Justin Payton from the Off the Ball Network. It's been Jay Stevens from the Jay Stevens Podcast, and Locked On Buckeyes. It's been Mo from Up in Flames, Dash Radio, part of the Off the Ball Network. It's been Couch Coach Live from the Couch Coach Live Podcast. We all thank you for listening. We all thank everybody who watched, and enjoy the football season and be kind to each other. And we'll be back with plenty more content, everyone. Thanks, gentlemen.
Peace.
All right.
Thank you.